Colonial myth of black success. A refutation of BantuCityDiaries channel. Black people perform best under white leadership. Why? Have you ever watched a man stand in the ashes of his grandfather's burned-down house and insist to anyone who will listen that his family never built anything in the first place? That is exactly the posture behind the argument that black people only thrive under white leadership, as stated by BantuCityDiaries channel, YouTube. Let us walk through this claim exactly the way it was presented, point by point, and see if it survives an honest look. The weak foundation this argument stands on. Before we even touch the numbers, we need to name what is really happening here. This argument is not analysis. It is colonial thinking dressed up in statistics, pretending to be scholarship, while actually being a man standing in wreckage and mistaking the wreckage for the original blueprint. The $6 trillion trick. The claim goes that black Americans hold $6 trillion in net worth, and this is somehow proof that white leadership produces black success. Sounds impressive until you place that $6 trillion beside the roughly $100 trillion held by white American households. Celebrating $6 trillion while ignoring $100 trillion is like admiring a man's crumb while pretending nobody else is sitting at the table. And remember, that $6 trillion was built by people running an economic race with weights strapped to their ankles. Segregation, redlining, employment discrimination stacked one on top of another for generations. A runner who finishes strong while dragging extra weight the whole distance is not proof the weight helped him. It is proof of exactly how extraordinary he is. The millionaire count. That means less than it sounds. Next comes the claim that America has 1.8 million black millionaires, more than several Eastern European countries combined. That is comparing apples to a completely different orchard. America runs the largest economy on Earth. A fish swimming in a large pond is not automatically a better fish than one in a small pond. It simply has more water around it. Black Americans are swimming in a big pond. That tells you about the pond, not about who is managing it. The erased African achievements. Then comes the claim that Africa has produced no remarkable inventions worth mentioning, that innovation only happens under white leadership. This one deserves the strongest pushback of all, because it is simply false. Long before European ships ever touched African shores, African civilizations were doing mathematics, smelting iron for tools and weapons, and building cities like Great Zimbabwe with stonework so precise that early European visitors refused to believe Africans had built it themselves. Has roots traced back to African civilizations. A burned library is not proof that no books ever existed inside it. It is proof that someone set the library on fire. The Western education excuse. Some point to prominent Africans educated in Western universities as proof that Western systems are simply superior. That argument conveniently forgets that colonial powers deliberately starved African education systems of funding, precisely to guarantee dependence long after flags were lowered on paper independence. If a man is forced to swim across a river because someone deliberately destroyed the bridge, his ability to swim does not prove swimming beats a bridge. It proves the bridge was sabotaged. The athletic talent distortion. The same logic gets applied to African athletes training abroad. As though this proves the West produces better talent, it proves African nations have been starved of the facilities and funding that talent needs to fully develop at home. A man training in a gym stocked with every modern machine is not automatically stronger than a man training with stones and rope. Hand them the same equipment and watch what actually happens. The failure to replicate old glory. Some ask why Africa has failed to rebuild the way Japan or Germany did after devastating wars. That comparison ignores something enormous. Japan and Germany retained sovereignty, resources, and international support to rebuild. Africa was not simply damaged by history. It was systematically pillaged for centuries, its borders deliberately drawn to guarantee future conflict, its wealth extracted and shipped elsewhere. Blaming Africa for not rebuilding like Japan while ignoring that difference is like blaming a house for collapsing when its entire foundation was built out of playing cards. The mixed heritage distraction. Then there is the attempt to strip black achievement away by pointing out that many accomplished black figures have mixed heritage. Race has always been more of a social reality than a strict biological one, and a man treated as black by the world around him does not stop being black because of his ancestry chart. A fruit smoothie made from several fruits does not stop being a fruit smoothie. This argument exists only to take credit away from black achievement and quietly hand it somewhere else. The aggression stereotype. Some claim black people respond to criticism with aggression, and that this hinders growth. That is an old, tired stereotype with no real evidence behind it, and it conveniently silences anyone raising legitimate concerns about discrimination. A child who has been burned repeatedly and flinches at the sight of fire is not being aggressive. That flinch is a memory speaking, not a personality flaw. The colonial revival, disguised as a solution perhaps, the most revealing suggestion of all, is the idea that African nations should simply hire white or East Asian professionals to run their government ministries. That is not a solution. That is colonialism wearing a consultant's badge. A company with a broken revolving door does not fix the door by swapping who walks through it. The structural rot stays exactly where it was, just benefiting a new face. The migration misreading. Lastly comes the claim that black people migrating to the West proves opportunity is best under white countries. Migration is not a vote of confidence. It is survival. People move toward resources, and those resources sit in the West, largely because they were extracted from everywhere else first. A person standing on shifting sand does not have the luxury of picking solid ground out of preference. They move because the sand beneath them is giving way. Where this weak thinking actually comes from. Now here is the part worth sitting with honestly. Arguments like this rarely come from careful research. They come from voices online, some of them Africans themselves, entire channels and followings built around telling black people that their culture, their history, their governance, their very capacity for excellence only counts when a white hand is steering it. Psychologists have studied this pattern closely, and it did not appear from nowhere. It carries a name, internalized racism, sometimes called colonial mentality, written about seriously by thinkers like Frantz Fanon, who explained how generations of being told your culture is lesser can eventually convince some people to believe it and repeat it as though it were their own discovery. This is not simply weak character in the casual sense people throw that phrase around. It is an inherited wound, mistaken for wisdom by the very people carrying it. The cure for that wound is not shame. The cure is knowing your own history deeply enough that nobody can convince you the fire that burned your library proves the library never held books in the first place. So here's a question worth sitting with. If a man only feels safe standing when someone else is holding him upright, has he actually learned to stand, or has he simply forgotten what his own legs were built to do?